Shalom. Welcome to this week's Torah class. This week's Parsha is called Parshat Vayigash. The Torah relates how Joseph, Yosef HaTzadik, finally is able to reunite with his brothers after 22 years of separation. The Torah tells us that Yosef was second in command to Pharaoh in Egypt, and he finally revealed himself to his brothers and was able to hug his closest brother Benjamin. It says that they hugged and cried over each other's necks. Comes Rashi, the foremost commentary on the Torah, and asks and explains right away and says, what were they crying about? Why were they crying over each other's necks? Yosef HaTzadik had a prophetic vision that the first and second temple that in the future will be built on land allocated to the tribe of Benjamin will be destroyed, and that's why he was crying. And the same goes for Benjamin. He too had a prophetic vision that the tabernacle, Mishkan Shiloh, which will be built on land allocated to the tribe of Yosef, would be destroyed, and that's why he was crying. And that's why they were both crying. Comes rabbis, sages later on and ask a question, hold on a second, is that the reason why they cried? They didn't have a better reason to cry? They didn't see each other for 2 years. They were extremely close. They came from the same mother, Rachel. You would imagine they're crying out of joy from finally reuniting. Or they were crying because they were crying over their own destruction that will happen in the future. Why were they crying over each other's destruction? So to explain this, let me tell you a story. Over 200 years ago, in a small Polish town, in a shtetl, lived a man by the name of Getzel. Now Getzel was married and he lived very simple life. He didn't have any children. He lived in a small hut, and what he did for a living was he would take off the hides off of animals after they were slaughtered. So he worked in the butcher shop, in the slaughterhouse. It was a very tough job. He had to be really fit, and it made a very meager living, but he was happy. He was a very simple Jew. He lived his life. Years pass, and he's getting older, and in the middle of his 80s, he realizes that he can't anymore and his time was up, and he realizes soon he's going to pass away. So he asked his wife to please summon the rabbi. The rabbi goes to the wife goes to summon the rabbi, and when the wife brings the rabbi to the house, the rabbi is about to walk in, and when he opens the door, he stops short. He right away shuts the door, recomposes himself, opens the door and walks in. He comes to Getzel's bedside, and he sits down and says, Getzel, what could I do for you? So Getzel tells him, listen, I lived my life, and I feel like time is running out. I would like to ask you a favor. Please have someone say Kaddish for me after I pass away. I know I never did anything good. I know I don't really deserve it. So I'm asking you this favor. The rabbi tried cheering up Getzel, said, Getzel, what do you mean you didn't do anything good? I'm sure you did something good. Getzel starts thinking and he starts crying. I never did. Getzel says, I don't remember ever doing anything good. Try harder. The rabbi keeps pushing Getzel. Try harder, try harder. Getzel at this point is sobbing. Getzel says, I can't remember anything I did good during my lifetime. Finally, suddenly, Getzel gets like a light bulb goes off, and suddenly Getzel stops crying, and he says, oh, I know, I remember something very small. Over like 50 years ago, I was on my way to work, and I saw on the top of the hill a wagon running with 2 horses running out of control, with women and children in the wagon screaming, and I knew they were in danger. And without thinking, I right away jumped in the way of the horses, got the horses to slow down, jumped onto the wagon, took control of the wagon, slowed it down, and I realized the wagon driver was dead drunk. He was sleeping. He was out drunk. And these people could have been, their lives were in danger. And I slowed the wagon down, jumped off, and went on my way to work. Very simple story. The rabbi says, oh, that's what it is. Don't doubt yourself. You're a great person. Stop paying yourself short. The rabbi says, listen, Getzel, I will promise you, I will have someone say Kaddish for you for the year after you pass away. but I want to do a deal. I want you to come back to me and tell me what happened in the heavens after you passed away. How did they deal with you? You think you were a simple person? I'm sure you're a very great person. The lives and the souls that you saved in that carriage, I'm sure, will stand on your behalf. The rabbi leaves. The next day, Getzel passes away. They arrange a funeral, and Getzel is buried in the righteous section of the cemetery. The rabbi has someone start saying Kaddish for an entire year. A couple days later, the rabbi has a dream. Getzel comes to him in a dream and says, Rabbi, I want to tell you what happened. I come to the heavenly court after I pass away, and they start judging me. They start judging all my good and bad deeds throughout my lifetime. And surprisingly, I had some good deeds. And there was a scale. And on one side, all the good deeds were getting piled up. And on the other side, unfortunately, all my bad deeds. And the scale kept going up and down, and I wasn't sure how it's going to go. But unfortunately, my bad deeds started piling up, heavier and heavier. And it looked like I was going to be in trouble. They were going to judge me that I would have to go to hell, Gehenna. Suddenly, we heard wild screams and hoofbeats of horses, and the entire wagon with the horses and the mud and all the passengers come running into the heavenly court and gets placed onto the scales where all my good deeds were. And obviously that outbalanced all the negative deeds that he did. And the heavenly court judged that I may be ushered into Gan Eden with all the righteous souls. But before I go, I have to come and fulfill my promise to you to let you know what happened. The rabbi woke up and realized that when he went to visit Getzel, when he opened the door, he saw the great light, the holiness coming, permeating above Getzel's bed, which was the light of these souls that he saved. And he realized, obviously, Getzel wasn't some simple hired worker working in the slaughterhouse. Rather, he was someone very special. Now this answers our question. Binyamin and Yosef, they were like the leaders of the Jewish people. They cared about every Jew's essence. And it bothered them the fact that the temple, which is the ultimate place where God is revealed, will be destroyed. And that's why they were mourning. And that's why they were crying. So why weren't they crying on each other? Why were they crying about each other's destruction? Why weren't they crying about their own? Because Yosef and Binyamin knew that when it comes to their own issues, when it comes to the destruction and hardships of their own life, you can't just break down and cry. You have to actually do something about it. But when you see someone else, when you see another person, and it's out of your control, you can't help the other person, all you could do is cry and pray, then it makes sense to cry. Otherwise, if it's coming from your own destruction, from your own issues, you have to always overpower yourself and keep pushing. The same thing in our story. Getzel cried over the fact that he didn't see any good deeds. But then when he remembered that one good thing, he right away realized, I have something standing in my way. I did something good. And there was no point of crying anymore. So we know that there were 2 temples destroyed, and we know that tomorrow, Friday, is the 10th of Teves. It's a day of fasting. We mourn over the fact that Jerusalem was destroyed, which was a preparation for the destruction of the temple, and that's why we fast. It's a day of repentance. And we know that in order to rebuild the temple, we have to fix the reason why it was destroyed. And how is that? By brotherly love, by loving one another without any reason. By doing so, we will merit to the coming of Mashiach. May it be speedily in our days. Shabbat Shalom.